She had no wolf. In a kingdom where your wolf determined your worth, Seren was worth nothing. For 3 years she had scrubbed floors and hauled water in the palace of Valdris, invisible to everyone who mattered. The servants pitied her. The nobles looked through her. And the guards only noticed her long enough to shove her out of their way. Wolfless. The word followed her like a curse. She could not shift, could not feel the wild spirit that lived in every other wolf-born creature. She was hollow where others were whole, and she had no memory of how she had become this way. One moment she had been a normal Omega. The next, she had woken in a ditch outside the capital with her wolf ripped from her soul and nearly 3 years missing from her mind. So when the royal twins were carried through the kitchens that morning, Seren did what she always did. She dropped her gaze and pressed herself against the wall. Prince Cyrus and Princess Vesper were 2 years old and had never spoken a single word. The healers called it a mystery. The court called it a tragedy. The king called it his greatest heartbreak. But as the nursemaid carried them past, both children turned their heads in unison. Their gray eyes, so like their father's, locked onto Seren. And then they spoke. "Mama." The kitchen went silent. Seren's blood turned to ice. That single word would either save her or destroy her completely. The morning had begun like every other. Seren rose before dawn, her small cot in the servants' quarters groaning as she shifted her weight. Around her, the other kitchen workers still slept, their breathing steady and deep. None of them stirred as she dressed in the dim light, pulling on the rough gray dress that marked her as palace staff. 3 years. 3 years of this life, and still the absence ached like a missing limb. She pressed a hand to her chest where the emptiness lived, that void where her wolf should have been. Other shifters described their wolves as companions, voices in their minds, instincts that guided them through danger. Seren had none of that. Just silence. Just the constant gnawing awareness that she was incomplete. The palace of Valdris was a cold place, all gray stone and high ceilings, beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, sharp and unforgiving. King Torin had ruled here for 7 years, though the last 2 had changed him. Everyone said so. Before his queen died, he had been reserved but fair. After her death in childbirth, he had become something else entirely. Distant, frozen, a king made of winter. His twin children were all that remained of Queen Cordelia. Prince Cyrus and Princess Vesper had come into the world as their mother left it, and something in that tragedy had marked them. They did not speak. They did not laugh. They simply existed, beautiful and silent, their eyes watching everything with an unnerving intensity. The healers had tried everything. Potions, rituals, even a summoner who claimed she could speak to their wolves. Nothing worked. At 2 years old, the royal twins remained mute, and the kingdom whispered that they were cursed. Seren kept her head down as she entered the kitchens. The head cook, a thick-armed woman named Berta, barely glanced at her. "Floors need scrubbing. Start by the east passage." Seren nodded and gathered her bucket. She preferred work that kept her away from the main halls, away from the nobility who wrinkled their noses when she passed. Wolfless. They could smell it on her. Or rather, they could smell the absence. Where other Omegas carried the warm scent of their wolves, Seren carried nothing. She was scentless. Empty. She was halfway through the east passage when she heard the footsteps. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. Seren pressed herself into an alcove, making herself small. A servant's first instinct, never be seen, never be noticed. But today, the universe had other plans. The nursemaid came first, a stern-faced woman named Helga who had served the royal family for decades. In her arms she carried Princess Vesper, the little girl's dark hair falling in soft curls around her face. Behind her walked a younger maid holding Prince Cyrus, his expression as solemn as his sister's. Seren dropped her gaze to the floor. Just a servant. Just invisible. Just nothing. But the footsteps stopped. She felt it before she saw it. A weight. A pressure. as if something was reaching for her across an impossible distance. Seren looked up. Both twins were staring directly at her. Not through her the way nobles usually did. At her. Into her. Their eyes wide and fixed with an intensity that made her breath catch. Vesper's small hand reached out, straining against Helga's grip. And then, for the first time in 2 years of silence, the princess spoke. "Mama." The word was soft, clear, unmistakable. Serene's heart stopped. Cyrus echoed his sister a moment later, his voice just as certain. "Mama." Helga gasped. The younger maid stumbled backward, and Seren stood frozen, her scrub brush clattering to the floor, unable to understand what was happening. "What did you do?" Helga's voice cut through the shock, sharp and accusing. "What did you do to them?" "Nothing." Seren's voice came out strangled. "I did not do anything. I have never even been near them." But the twins were still reaching for her, still straining against their caretakers, still repeating that impossible word. "Mama, Mama, Mama." Guards appeared at the end of the corridor. Someone had shouted for them. Seren did not know who. Her mind was spinning, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. "Seize her," Helga commanded. "She has bewitched the royal children. Take her to the king." Rough hands grabbed Seren's arms. She did not resist. She could not have even if she wanted to. Because beneath the terror, beneath the confusion, she felt something else. A flicker. Deep in her chest. In the empty space where her wolf used to live. Something was waking up. The throne room of Valdris was built to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, supported by columns of black marble veined with silver. Torches burned in iron sconces, their light casting long shadows across the stone floor. And at the far end, raised on a dais of 3 steps, sat the Iron Throne. King Torin did not sit as much as occupy. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with pale blonde hair that fell past his jaw and eyes the color of a winter storm. Handsome, Seren supposed, if you found glaciers handsome. Cold, unyielding, carved from something harder than flesh. He watched her approach with no expression at all. The guards had not been gentle. Seren's arms ached where their fingers had dug in. Her knees were bruised from where she had stumbled on the stairs. But she forced herself to stand straight as they shoved her forward, forced herself to meet those pale eyes even though every instinct screamed at her to cower. "This is her?" The king's voice matched his appearance, low, controlled, empty of warmth. "Yes, your majesty." Helga stepped forward, still clutching Princess Vesper. The little girl had gone quiet, but her eyes remained fixed on Seren. She was scrubbing floors in the East Passage when the children saw her. They spoke, your majesty. For the first time. They called her... She hesitated, as if the word itself was poison. They called her Mama. Something flickered in the king's eyes. So brief Seren almost missed it. Then the ice returned. "Leave us," he said. "Your majesty?" Helga looked uncertain. "Leave the children. Take the guards. Leave us." It was not a request. Helga handed Vesper to a waiting attendant, shot Seren a venomous look, and retreated. The guards followed. The massive doors closed with a boom that echoed through the empty chamber. Seren stood alone before the king and his silent children. For a long moment, no one spoke. Torin's gaze moved over her slowly, assessing. She knew what he saw. A thin omega in a servant's dress, her dark hair escaping its braid, her face pale with fear. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that should make his children speak for the first time in 2 years. "What are you?" he asked finally. "A servant, your majesty. I work in the kitchens." "That is what you do. I asked what you are." Seren swallowed. "I am an omega. Wolfless. I have been in your palace for 3 years. Wolfless." He said the word like he was tasting it. "How does an omega lose her wolf?" "I do not know, your majesty. I woke one day and she was gone. Years of my memory. Gone with her." The king's eyes narrowed. He rose from his throne, descending the steps with a predator's grace. Seren forced herself not to retreat as he approached. He stopped close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him. Actual cold, like standing near a window in winter. You expect me to believe that you, a wolfless kitchen servant, somehow made my children speak their first words? By accident? I do not expect you to believe anything, Your Majesty. I only know what happened. I was scrubbing floors. They saw me. They spoke. Behind him, Vesper squirmed in the attendant's arms. Cyrus, held by another servant, made a sound of distress. "Mama," Vesper said again, her small voice carrying through the vast room. "Want Mama?" The king turned. His children were reaching for Seren, their faces crumpling with an emotion she could not name. Longing, perhaps. Or recognition. But that was impossible. She had never held them, never even been in the same room as them before today. So why did something in her chest ache at the sight of their outstretched hands? "Your Majesty." An advisor hurried through a side door, his robes flapping. Lord Marin, if Seren remembered correctly. A thin man with calculating eyes. "I came as soon as I heard. This woman must be executed immediately. Clearly she has used some dark magic to bewitch the prince and princess." "The children have not spoken in 2 years," Torin said, his gaze still fixed on Seren. "And you want me to kill the only person who has made them speak?" "She is dangerous, Your Majesty. The very fact that they respond to her proves..." "Proves what?" The king turned, and Lord Marin took an involuntary step back. "Proves that my children are not broken? Proves that there is someone in this castle who can reach them when no healer, no shaman, no summoner has managed it? Your Majesty, please, see reason. I see my children speaking for the first time since their mother died." Torin's voice could have frozen fire. "I see my son and daughter reaching for someone with more life in their eyes than I have seen in 2 years. And you want me to destroy that?" Lord Marin opened his mouth, closed it, bowed stiffly. Torin turned back to Seren. His expression remained unreadable, but something had shifted in those winter storm eyes. "You will stay," he said. Seren blinked. "Your Majesty? You will remain in the palace, under watch. If my children respond to you, then you will be near them. But know this." He stepped closer, close enough that the cold pouring off him made her shiver. "If this is some trick, some scheme, some magic you have worked on my blood, I will not simply kill you. I will make you beg for death." Seren held his gaze even as fear coiled in her stomach. "I have no magic, Your Majesty. I have nothing at all." Something flickered in his expression. Almost like recognition, almost like pain. "Then we have that in common," he said quietly. Before she could respond, he turned away. "Take her to the East Wing. She will have rooms near the nursery, guards on her door at all times." The attendants hurried to obey, and as Seren was led away, she looked back once. The twins were watching her go. And in their eyes, so like their father's, she saw something that made no sense at all. They looked like they were finally home. The rooms they gave her were nicer than anything Seren had known in 3 years. A real bed with actual blankets. A window that looked out over the palace gardens. A small fireplace already crackling with warmth. It felt like a trap. She stood in the center of the room, afraid to touch anything, as a woman entered behind her. Seren recognized her immediately. Lady Vessa, the late queen's sister. She had seen her from a distance before, a striking woman with auburn hair and sharp cheekbones, always dressed in silks that cost more than Seren would earn in a lifetime. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Her green eyes swept over Seren with barely concealed disgust. "So, you are the creature that has bewitched my sister's children." "I have bewitched no one, my lady." "Lady Vessa." The correction was sharp. "And forgive me if I do not take the word of a wolfless Omega who appeared from nowhere and somehow made the royal twins speak." Seren said nothing. There was nothing to say. Lady Vessa circled her slowly, like a predator examining prey. "My sister died giving birth to those children. Did you know that? She bled out on the birthing bed while they took their first breaths, and in 2 years, they have not spoken a single word. Not to their father, not to their nursemaids, not to anyone who loved Cordelia. She stopped directly in front of Seren. And now, they call you Mama, a stranger, a nobody, a wolfless wretch scrubbing floors in the kitchen. The words should have stung. They did sting. But beneath the hurt, Seren felt something else. Confusion. Because none of this made sense. I do not know why they spoke to me, she said quietly. I wish I did. Wishes are worthless. Lady Vessa leaned closer. Let me be clear, I do not trust you. I do not believe this is coincidence, and I will be watching you every moment you are near those children. If you harm them, if you so much as make them cry, I will ensure you suffer in ways you cannot imagine. Are we understood? Yes, Lady Vessa. Something like satisfaction flickered in those green eyes. Then she was gone, her silk skirts rustling as she swept from the room. Seren let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. A knock at the door made her tense again, but it was only a servant, a young girl with nervous eyes. The king requests your presence in the nursery, miss. The children are asking for you. Asking. The children were asking for her. Children who had not spoken in 2 years. Seren followed the servant through winding corridors. The nursery was warm and bright, painted in soft colors with thick carpets covering the floor. Toys were scattered about, wooden horses and cloth dolls and building blocks. A cheerful room, a room designed for laughter. But there was no laughter. There was only silence, and the twins sitting side by side on a cushioned bench, their eyes fixed on the door. The moment Seren stepped inside, they reached for her. Mama? Vesper's voice was stronger now, more certain. Mama here. Serene's eyes burned. She did not understand this. She did not understand any of this. But when she knelt before them and they wrapped their small arms around her neck, something inside her cracked open, the void in her chest, the emptiness where her wolf had been. It pulsed. Just once. Like a heartbeat she had forgotten she had. I am here, she whispered, the words coming from somewhere deep. I am here. She felt him before she saw him. That cold presence, that winter weight. Seren looked up to find the king standing in the doorway, watching the scene with an expression she could not read. They have never let anyone hold them, he said quietly. Not even me. Not since their mother died. Seren did not know how to respond. The children clung to her as if she might disappear, their small fingers tangled in her hair. Torin stepped closer. His eyes moved from his children to her face, searching for something. Who are you? Truly. I told you, Your Majesty, I am no one. No one does not make mute children speak. No one does not make them reach out for the first time in 2 years. He crouched down, bringing himself to her level. This close, she could see the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. This close, he looked less like a king and more like a father who had been slowly breaking. I am going to find out the truth. Whatever it takes. Whatever it costs. I hope you do, Seren said, surprising herself with her own honesty. Because I need to know too. Something shifted in his expression. Not warmth, exactly. But perhaps the beginning of something other than suspicion. The children will have dinner soon, he said, rising. You will eat with them. I will have the terms of your arrangement brought to you this evening. Until I understand what is happening here, you will not leave the East Wing. You will not speak to anyone outside the nursery staff, and you will be watched constantly. I understand. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. My children's names are Cyrus and Vesper. If you are to care for them, you should use them. Yes, Your Majesty. Torin. The word seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. When we are alone with the children. Torin. Then he was gone. Seren sat on the nursery floor, the twins still wrapped around her, and tried to make sense of a world that had just shifted beneath her feet. That night, After Cyrus and Vesper had been put to bed, after Seren had sung them a lullaby she did not remember learning, she sat alone in her new room and stared at the fire. The terms had arrived as promised. A formal document outlining her duties, her restrictions, her fate if she failed. She would care for the twins. She would remain under guard. She would submit to weekly interrogations until the truth of her connection to the children was discovered, and if she harmed them in any way, death would be the kindest outcome. Seren signed without hesitation. What choice did she have? And besides, something in her wanted to be near those children, needed to be near them in a way she could not explain. She was about to extinguish her candle when she heard it. A small voice, coming from the adjoining door that connected to the nursery. Seren crossed the room and pressed her ear to the wood. Vesper. The little girl was talking in her sleep. But it was not the word Mama that made Serene's heart stop. It was her own name. Seren, Vesper murmured. Seren, Seren, do not leave again. Again. Seren had never told anyone her name. Not the guards who arrested her. Not the king who questioned her. Not the servants who escorted her here. So how did a 2-year-old child know it? And what did she mean by again? The first week passed in a blur of routine and watchful eyes. Seren woke each morning before dawn, a habit she could not break. But instead of scrubbing floors, she now bathed and dressed in the simple but well-made clothes that had appeared in her wardrobe. Gray. Always gray, as if someone wanted to remind her that she was still a servant despite her new position. The twins waited for her every morning. The moment she entered the nursery, their faces would light up in a way that made Seren's chest ache. They reached for her. They spoke to her. Simple words at first. Mama. Here. Stay. But each day brought more. Hungry. Play. Sing. And always, her name. Seren. As if they had known it all along. She still had no explanation. Neither did the king, though he had brought in 3 different healers to examine her. They had poked and prodded and made her drink foul-smelling potions, but their conclusions were always the same. She was wolfless. She had no magic. She was, by all accounts, exactly what she appeared to be. A nobody. But nobodies did not make royal children speak after 2 years of silence, and so the whispers continued. On the 7th day, everything changed. There will be a court gathering this evening, Lady Vessa announced, sweeping into the nursery. The king has decided to present the children publicly, to show the nobles that they are speaking. Seren's stomach dropped. Publicly? You will attend as well. The king wants the court to see the connection between you and the twins. She smiled coldly. I suggest you make yourself presentable. The king has sent a dress. The dress was silver. Not gray, but actual silver, with delicate embroidery along the bodice and sleeves. It was the most beautiful thing Seren had ever worn. It was also, she suspected, a message. Silver was the royal color. By dressing her in it, Torin was making a statement. She did not know if that statement would protect her or paint a target on her back. The great hall was packed when she arrived, nobles in their finest silks, advisors in their formal robes. Everyone turned to stare as Seren entered, the whispers rising like a wave. That is her? The wolfless one? How dare she wear silver? Seren kept her head high. 3 years of invisibility had taught her how to endure cruelty. She could endure this too. The king sat on his throne, his children on smaller chairs beside him. Vesper's eyes scanned the crowd until they found Seren. The moment they did, the little girl's face transformed. Mama! She scrambled off her chair and ran toward Seren with arms outstretched. The hall went silent. Seren knelt and caught the princess. Cyrus followed a moment later, his small hand finding Seren's and holding on tight. She speaks, someone breathed. The princess speaks. The whispers shifted. Less suspicious now. More awed. Seren looked up and found the king watching her. Something in his eyes had softened. Just a fraction. Just enough to notice. Rise, he said quietly. Bring them here. Seren walked toward the throne. Every step felt like a mile. Every eye in the room tracked her movement. She stopped at the base of the dais. Torin descended the steps until he stood before her. "My children have chosen you," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "I do not understand why, but I understand this." He reached out and placed a hand on Cyrus's head. "They are speaking. They are alive in a way they have not been since their mother died." He looked at Seren then, and for one breathless moment, the ice in his eyes cracked. "Until I understand the truth of this bond, you will remain under my protection. Anyone who harms you harms the crown. Anyone who threatens you threatens my children." His gaze swept the room, lingering on Lord Marin's furious face. "Is that understood?" A murmur of assent rippled through the crowd. But as Seren turned to leave, Vesper reached out toward her father. "Papa," she said clearly. "Papa, come too." The hall gasped. Seren's eyes flew to Torin's face. He looked like he had been struck. His hand trembled as he reached for his daughter. "Yes," he said hoarsely. "Papa will come too." The nursery felt different with the king inside it. Seren had grown accustomed to this space over the past week. The soft carpets, the scattered toys, the warmth of the fire. It had become a sanctuary of sorts. But with Torin here, the sanctuary felt smaller. His presence filled the room, cold and vast and impossible to ignore. The twins did not seem to notice. Vesper had demanded that her father sit on the floor, and to Seren's astonishment, he had obeyed. The Alpha King of Valdris, feared by nobles and enemies alike, sat cross-legged on a carpet while his daughter placed a cloth doll in his hands. "Hold her gently," Vesper instructed. "She is sleeping." "I see." Torin cradled the doll with exaggerated care. "Like this?" "Yes." "Good, Papa." Something broke in Seren's chest. She turned away, busying herself with Cyrus, who was stacking wooden blocks into an unsteady tower. "You are uncomfortable." Torin's voice made her stiffen. She had not realized he was watching her. "I am merely giving you space with your children, Your Majesty." "Torin, I told you." "Torin." The name still felt strange on her tongue, too intimate, too dangerous. "And you are deflecting. What troubles you?" How could she explain? The court had looked at her with suspicion. Lady Vessa had glared daggers. Lord Marin had watched her like a hawk, and the king himself had declared her under his protection, which should have made her feel safe. But Seren had learned long ago that safety was an illusion. "The court does not trust me," she said finally. "Your protection may keep them from acting openly, but it will not stop them from scheming." "No," Torin agreed. "It will not." "Then why do it?" He was quiet for a moment. Vesper had reclaimed her doll and was now making it walk across his knee. "Because my children deserve to be happy," he said, "and for reasons I do not understand, you make them happy." He looked at her then, and the ice in his eyes had thawed just enough for her to see the exhaustion beneath. "I have tried everything to reach them. Healers, shamans, toys, songs. I have begged them to speak to me, and they looked through me as if I were not there." His voice fractured almost imperceptibly. "But they speak to you. They reach for you. They call you Mama." He exhaled slowly. "I do not care if the court trusts you. I care that my children are finally alive again." Seren did not know what to say. She had spent so long being invisible, worthless, nothing. And here was a king telling her that she mattered. "They love you," she said quietly. "Cyrus and Vesper. They may not show it the way you expect, but they do." Torin's jaw tightened. "How can you know that?" "Because Vesper asked you to come tonight." "Papa, come too." A child who did not love her father would not have asked. Something changed in his gaze. Not warmth, exactly, but something softer than ice. "You see things," he said slowly. "Things others miss." "I spent 3 years invisible. You learn to observe when no one is observing you." He studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, his lips curved into something that was almost a smile. Perhaps I chose the right person after all. Before Seren could respond, Cyrus's tower of blocks collapsed with a clatter. The boy's face crumpled, tears welling in his eyes. Seren moved instinctively, pulling him into her lap. It is all right. We can build it again. But Cyrus was not looking at the blocks. He was looking at his father. Papa help? He asked, his voice small and uncertain. Torin froze. Then, slowly, he moved across the carpet until he was beside them. Yes, he said hoarsely. Papa will help. They built the tower together. Seren, Cyrus, Vesper, and the king of Valdris, stacking blocks on a nursery floor while the fire crackled and the night grew dark. It was absurd. It was impossible. And yet, when Torin's hand accidentally brushed against Seren's as they reached for the same block, she felt something spark in the hollow place where her wolf had been. Just a flicker, just a whisper. But it was there. Later, after the children had fallen asleep, Torin walked Seren to her door. Thank you, she said, for tonight, for staying with them. You should not thank me for being a father. Perhaps not, but I am thanking you anyway. He looked at her then. Really looked. You are strange, he said. A wolfless omega who makes mute children speak and thanks kings for playing with blocks. You are strange too, Seren replied, an alpha king who sits on nursery floors and cradles cloth dolls. That almost smile appeared again. Perhaps we are both strange. Perhaps. Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy with things unsaid. Good night, Seren. Her name and his voice sounded different. Warmer somehow. Good night, Torin. The weeks that followed were the happiest Seren could remember. Each morning she woke to the sound of small feet running toward her door. Cyrus and Vesper burst in before she had even finished dressing, their faces bright with excitement, and their voices growing stronger each day. But the mornings were not what made her heart race. The evenings did. Torin came every night now, not just to watch from the doorway, but to sit with them, to play with them, to read stories in his deep, quiet voice while the twins curled against him with their eyes drooping. He was learning how to be a father again. Seren could see it in the way he softened, bit by bit, his ice thawing in the warmth of his children's laughter. And he seemed to draw closer to her as well. It started with small things, a hand on her shoulder as he passed, a lingering look when he thought she was not watching. The way he said her name, soft and careful, as if it was something precious. And then there were the conversations. After the children fell asleep, Torin would walk Seren to her door. And instead of leaving immediately, he would linger. They would talk. About the kingdom, at first, the trade disputes with the eastern provinces, the advisors who pushed for war when he wanted peace. But gradually, the conversations became more personal. My wife was kind, he said one night. Cordelia. She had a warmth that drew people to her. Even me. He paused. I was not always cold. Before her death, I was merely reserved. But when she died, when I held my screaming children and realized she was gone, something inside me froze. Seren listened without interrupting. The healers said it was my wolf, he continued, that my grief had trapped him, that the cold I feel is my beast refusing to emerge. He looked at her, his eyes haunted. I have not shifted in 2 years. Not since the night she died. Seren's breath caught. An alpha who could not shift. A king whose wolf was locked away. Does it hurt? She asked quietly. Every moment. He exhaled slowly. But I have grown accustomed to pain. Without thinking, Seren reached out and touched his hand. His skin was ice cold, but she did not pull away. Perhaps, she said, we are both missing something. You, your wolf. Me, mine. Torin looked down at her hand on his. For a moment she thought he would pull away. Instead, his fingers curled around hers. Perhaps, he agreed. They stood like that for a long moment, Hands intertwined in the dim corridor. And Seren felt that flicker in her chest again. Stronger now. More insistent. I should go, she whispered. Yes, he said, but he did not release her hand. When he finally let go, his eyes held something she had never seen before. Not ice, not grief. Something warmer, something that made her pulse race. She closed her door and leaned against it. This was dangerous. She was a wolfless Omega. He was the Alpha King. There was no future here. But her heart did not care about futures. Her heart only cared about the way he looked at her. I am falling in love with him, she realized. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. But home, Seren had learned, was something that could be taken away. The following evening, she discovered just how true that was. She was putting the twins to bed when Lady Vessa appeared in the doorway. The woman's face was pale, her green eyes blazing. The king requires your presence, she said, immediately. The throne room was empty except for Torin and Lord Marin. The king stood rigid, his face a mask of ice. Lord Marin was smiling. Your Majesty? Seren's voice trembled. What is happening? Torin did not answer. He did not even look at her. Lord Marin stepped forward, a scroll clutched in his bony fingers. We have discovered the truth about you, girl, about who you really are. I have told you everything I know. Lies. Lord Marin unfurled the scroll. According to records from the northern provinces, a woman matching your description was arrested nearly 3 years ago for the murder of an alpha heir. She was sentenced to execution, but escaped before the sentence could be carried out. Her wolf was stripped as punishment. Her memories were erased so she could never reveal who helped her flee. Seren's heart stopped. That is not possible. I would never— The records do not lie. Lord Marin's smile widened. You are not just a wolfless Omega girl. You are a convicted murderer. Seren looked at Torin, begged him silently to meet her eyes. But the king stared straight ahead, his expression carved from stone. And for the first time since the twins had called her Mama, Seren felt utterly alone. The dungeon beneath the palace was everything the nursery was not. Cold, dark, silent. Water dripped somewhere in the blackness. Seren sat on the stone floor of her cell, her silver dress now stained and torn, and tried to remember how to breathe. Murderer. The word echoed in her mind, but she had no memory of killing anyone, no memory of the years that had been stolen from her. Only the hollow ache where her wolf had been, and the desperate certainty that something was wrong. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Seren lifted her head, expecting guards. Instead, she saw Torin. He stood outside her cell, a torch in his hand, his face half-shadowed by the flickering light. Leave us, he said to the guards. They retreated. Their footsteps faded into silence. Torin stepped closer to the bars. His pale eyes found hers in the darkness. Tell me the truth, he said quietly. All of it. I have told you the truth. I have no memory of— Not that. He gripped the bars, his knuckles white. Tell me why my children call you Mama. Tell me why they knew your name before anyone spoke it. Tell me why, when I touch you, the ice inside me thaws for the first time in 2 years. Seren stared at him. I do not know. You must know something. His voice broke. Because I cannot execute you, Seren. Every logical part of me says you are guilty. And yet my wolf, my frozen, silent wolf who has not stirred in 2 years, is howling. He is howling for you. Seren's breath caught. Your wolf? He knows you. Torin's voice was raw. When I touch you, I feel him. When I say your name, he responds. It is as if— He stopped, his eyes widening. It is as if you are his mate. The word hung between them like a blade. Mate. Seren pressed her hand to her chest, to the void that had flickered and pulsed every time Torin was near. That is impossible, she whispered. You were mated to Cordelia. Yes. Torin's face contorted with confusion. So why does my wolf say otherwise? Why does every instinct I possess scream that you belong to me? Seren had no answer, only questions. There is someone who might know, she said slowly. The healers said my wolf was not just missing, she was removed, stripped away by powerful magic. Magic that also erased my memories. Torin's eyes sharpened. What are you saying? Someone did this to me deliberately. Someone wanted me to forget. And if we can find out who, we might find out why your children recognize me. Why your wolf claims me as his mate. I am going to find the truth, he said. Whatever it takes. He reached through the bars and cupped her face in his hands. His touch was ice cold, but Seren leaned into it anyway. And if my wolf is right, if you are truly mine, he said, then I swear on my crown that I will burn down anyone who tried to take you from me. Seren's eyes burned with tears. And if the truth destroys us both? Then we will be destroyed together. He released her and stepped back. I will return before dawn. Stay strong. Then he was gone. But before the echo of his footsteps faded entirely, another sound reached her ears. A voice, soft, familiar, coming from the shadows at the far end of her cell. He will not find the truth. Not unless I allow it. Seren spun around. A figure emerged from the darkness, cloaked in black, face hidden beneath a deep hood. Who are you? Seren demanded. The figure reached up and pushed back the hood. Seren stopped breathing. She was looking at her own face. The woman who wore Seren's face smiled. But the expression was wrong. Too sharp. Too knowing. Surprised? The woman asked. Her voice was Serene's voice, but colder. I am you. Or rather, I was you, before they split us apart. The woman circled closer. My name is Seraphine. I am your wolf. That is impossible. Wolves do not take human form. Normally, yes. Seraphine stopped an arm's length away. But I am not a normal wolf. And what was done to us was not normal magic. Seren's mind raced. You are saying someone literally separated us? Now you begin to understand. Seraphine's amber eyes glittered with ancient pain. Nearly 3 years ago, you were Torin's mate. His true mate. You carried his children in your womb. The world tilted. What? Cyrus and Vesper. Seraphine's voice softened. They are yours, Seren. Not Cordelia's. Yours. You gave birth to them. And then Cordelia took everything from you. No, Cordelia died giving birth to them. Everyone knows. Everyone knows a lie. Seraphine's face hardened. Cordelia was barren. She could not give Torin the heirs he needed, but she was also powerful. A witch who had hidden her magic to marry a king. When she discovered that Torin had found his true mate, that you were carrying his children, she devised a plan. Seren felt sick. What plan? She used forbidden magic to steal your memories, separate your wolf from your body, and claim your children as her own. The birth that killed her was not childbirth. It was the backlash of the spell. The magic demanded a price, and Cordelia paid it with her life. Seraphine's jaw clenched. But not before she completed her work. She erased you from Torin's memory. She made the entire kingdom believe the twins were hers. Seren's legs gave out. She slid down the bars until she was sitting on the cold stone floor. Her children. Cyrus and Vesper were her children. And Torin was her mate. Her true mate. Why are you telling me this now? Seren managed. Because I could not reach you. Seraphine knelt before her. The spell that separated us also bound me. But when you touched Torin, when the mate bond began to reawaken, the spell weakened. Can we be whole again? Yes. But not easily. Seraphine's expression grew grave. The spell is anchored to a talisman that Cordelia created. As long as it exists, we remain apart. And as long as we remain apart, Torin's wolf will stay frozen. Where is this talisman? Lady Vessa has it. Cordelia's sister. She has been protecting the secret for 3 years. Lady Vessa, the woman who had watched her with hatred from the beginning. Lord Marin, Seren said suddenly, the murder accusation. A fabrication. Lady Vessa provided the false records. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Seraphine stood. Our time is up. You must find the talisman and destroy it. For our children. For our mate. Then she stepped back into the shadows and vanished. The cell door burst open. Guards flooded in, followed by Lady Vessa herself. The king has ordered her moved to the East Tower, Vessa commanded. More secure accommodations for a murderer. Seren rose to her feet. She met Vessa's gaze without flinching. I know what you did, she said quietly. I know what Cordelia did, and I will prove it. For just a moment fear flickered in Vessa's eyes, then the mask returned. You will prove nothing, she hissed, because you will be dead before dawn. The East Tower was cold and high and utterly isolated. Seren paced her small cell. Lady Vessa planned to have her executed before dawn. That gave her only hours to escape, find the talisman, and expose the truth. But then the door opened. Seren spun, expecting guards. Instead, she saw Pippa, the young servant who had brought her meals. The girl's face was pale. Quickly, Pippa whispered. The king sent me. He knows Lady Vessa is planning something. Lord Marin has blocked all the entrances to this tower. Pippa pressed a key into Serene's hand. There is a servant's passage behind the tapestry on the 3rd landing. Why are you helping me? Because you made the children speak. Pippa's voice broke. My younger brother was born mute. When I saw what you did for the prince and princess, I thought, maybe miracles are possible. Seren pulled the girl into a fierce embrace. Thank you. Then she was running. The servant's passage was narrow and dark, but Seren navigated it by touch. She emerged in the east wing, not far from the nursery. Lady Vessa's chambers. That was where the talisman would be. She crept through the shadows until she reached the ornate doors. They were unlocked. Careless. The chambers were lavish. Seren searched quickly, pulling open drawers and checking hidden compartments. Nothing. Then she saw it. A portrait of Cordelia hung above the fireplace. The late queen was beautiful, auburn-haired like her sister, her smile serene. And around her painted neck hung a pendant that matched the faint indentation Seren could see in the mantle. She is wearing it, Seren realized. Looking for something? Seren whirled. Lady Vessa stood in the doorway, a dagger in one hand. And around her neck, glinting in the early morning light, hung a pendant of black crystal. I knew you would come here, Vessa said. You are predictable. Your sister stole my life. She took what she deserved. Vessa's voice hardened. Cordelia loved Torin for years before you came along. She was supposed to be his queen. And then you appeared. Some nobody Omega. And his wolf chose you. Her grip tightened on the dagger. It was not fair. So you helped her destroy me. I helped her survive, but the magic killed her anyway. Tears glittered in Vessa's eyes. And now you have returned to destroy everything she built. She sacrificed nothing. She stole. Enough. Vessa raised the dagger. This ends now. She lunged. Seren dodged, barely. The blade sliced her arm. Pain flared, but she pushed through it, grabbing a candlestick and swinging. The blow connected with Vessa's wrist. The dagger clattered to the floor. They grappled, crashing into furniture. Vessa was strong, fueled by desperation. But Seren was fighting for more than survival. She was fighting for her children. Her hand found the chain around Vessa's neck. She pulled. The chain snapped. The pendant flew across the room. The moment it left Vessa's body, the world exploded with light. Seren felt it like a thunderclap in her chest. The void where her wolf had been suddenly filled with warmth, with presence, with a voice she had not heard in 3 years. I am here, Seraphine whispered. We are whole. Seren? The door burst open. Torin stood there, his eyes wild, his face transformed. And behind him, held by bewildered nursemaids, were Cyrus and Vesper. "Papa found Mama," Vesper said happily. Torin crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled Seren into his arms. The cold that had always surrounded him was gone. His skin was warm. His eyes were bright. "I remember," he said hoarsely. "The moment the pendant broke, I remembered everything. Our meeting, our mating, the pregnancy." His voice cracked. "They took you from me." "I know." Seren cupped his face. "I know. I almost executed you. But you did not." She pressed her forehead to his. "You trusted your wolf. You trusted me." Behind them, Lady Vessa was sobbing on the floor. Guards arrived to take her away. Lord Marin was arrested within the hour. But Seren barely noticed. Because Cyrus and Vesper had broken free and were running toward her, their small arms outstretched. "Mama! Mama! Mama!" She knelt and caught them, pressing kisses to their hair. Her children, finally, truly hers. Torin wrapped his arms around all 3 of them. "Never again," he said fiercely. "I will never lose you again." 6 months later, the kingdom of Valdris gathered to witness a coronation. Not of a king, of a queen. Seren stood before the assembled nobles in a gown of silver and gold, the crown of Valdris resting on her brow. At her side stood Torin, his hand intertwined with hers, his eyes bright with pride and love. Cyrus and Vesper sat on small thrones beside them, chattering happily. They had not stopped talking in 6 months. Lady Vessa had been exiled, Lord Marin had been executed, and the story of what Cordelia had done had been recorded so that no one would ever forget. That night, after the celebrations had ended, Torin found her in the garden where they had first touched hands. "My queen," he said softly, "my king." He pulled her close. "I wasted 2 years being cold. I will spend the rest of my life making up for it." "You have already started." He kissed her then, deep and slow, and Seren felt her wolf howl with joy. They had been broken. They had been separated. They had been deceived and betrayed and nearly destroyed. But they had found each other again. And this time, nothing would ever tear them apart.